Hello, everyone. We're just letting people file in. Sorry for getting this started. We're going to be starting probably 1 or 2 minutes late. Just waiting on the final people to have all of their connectivity. And I think we're there. Oh, I am on. Wrong. There we go. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is the Rethinking Spaces for Teens. If you meant to be in the other session, just let us know in chat and someone from the planning committee can get you the link to the other Zoom. Although, if you didn't have a preference and this is where you landed, I highly suggest sticking around because we're going to be talking about all things live and virtual for teens. So again, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. If it's not your first time with us today, welcome again to the 2021 Maryland Teen Reconnect Conference. Like I said, this session is Rethinking Spaces for Teens. And we have 3 amazing presenters for you today. We have Kevin Jace, a librarian 3 from Baltimore County Public Library. We have Will Malkus, a librarian 3 from Baltimore County Public Library, and Faith Tidings, a youth services supervisor from Charles County Public Library. I don't know why, but the more that I say public library in a row, it becomes like, feels like my mouth is full of like marshmallows, but hopefully they all came out appropriately. My name's Isaiah West, and I am here to be your Zoom host for the day. We have been on Zoom for a really long time, but just in case you're new or you've taken a break or you've forgotten, we're going to go over the rules and some tips. In the bottom left-hand corner, you have your option for mute and stop video. We do ask that you keep yourself muted when you are not talking, but do not worry if you accidentally get unmuted and we hear background noise, me or one of the other co-hosts will mute you. So you don't have to worry too much about it. We also love to see everyone's faces, but you're more than welcome to stop and start your video as you see fit. We know that sometimes things are happening in the background that become a little distracting, so completely understand if you need to stay off video. If you're calling in from your phone, which I don't think we have anyone calling in from phone in this session, but I'll say it anyway, you can use *6 to mute and unmute yourself. We ask that you use chat to ask your questions or you raise your hand, and that'll be during our Q&A/discussion section for today's presentation. To raise your hand, you select the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and raise hand should be one of those reactions. If you are calling in, you would press *9 to raise your hand. If you do not see the reactions button, it might be that you're using the web browser version of Zoom or your Zoom does not have the most recent update. And that is fine. Feel free to just say in chat that you cannot raise your hand, and I will take that as I'll take that as you want to speak. Or you can just type your question. Either one works fine. In the top right-hand corner, you can choose between speaker view and gallery view. As people are sharing their slides, obviously the slides will be prominent, but once we move into the discussion, you're welcome to switch from speaker view to the full gallery view if you would prefer. If at any point you have tech issues or questions, please share in the chat and someone from the planning committee will assist you as soon as they possibly can. While we are getting started, if you can please fill out the attendance sheet that Tia is sharing And also, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, your name and the library that you're from. After the session, we will be sending your CE forms, an evaluation, and a recording. Please give that, probably a week before we can get absolutely everything to you. Today will be part presentation, part discussion, which means there is going to be plenty of time at the end for questions. So we please ask that you hold your questions until all of the presentations are finished. However, if you have just a burning question or you're worried that you're going to forget to ask your question, feel free to type it in the chat and we will answer it later in the session. When it's time for the Q&A portion of our session, we ask that you raise your hand via Zoom or type your question in the chat and then wait to be called on before you unmute yourself. That way everyone can get a chance to speak and we will try our best to do it in the order that it was asked / hands were raised. And before we get started, we will again go over a few agreements to make sure we're all on the same page for our discussion. We first ask that you respect yourself and respect others in this space. Please be open. Ouchies and oops are okay. It's okay if you say something wrong and you say oops, and it's okay if you say ouchie when things might come off as a little bit uncomfortable. We ask that you participate and pass, which means that we invite everyone to be a part of the discussion, but we also want to be sure that we're providing space for others to share as well. Escuchar is Spanish for listen. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Please be open to the experience that we are providing today. And we ask that everyone remember that this is a sensitive and safe space. Before I pass it over to our first presenter, if you have additional agreements that you like to take note of when you are in discussions, please feel free to share those in the chat. We always like to hear other agreements that people have for creating respectful discussion platforms. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to Faith. Let me stop sharing so that you can start.
Hi, everyone. Super nervous. Okay. So reinventing teen spaces. So quick intro, I'm Faith Tidings. I'm the Youth Services Supervisor at the PD Brown Memorial Branch in Charles County. So as a Youth Services Supervisor, I'm in charge of the whole gamut of the youth, so 0 to 18. So the teens, unfortunately, and I've only had this position for a little while, so unfortunately the teens in my branch pre-COVID didn't have a really great space. There was some staffing concerns, just a lot of things didn't really go the way that I was hoping they would go. So now that we're kind of in this COVID time, we're revamping everything. I'm super excited about it. I'm super excited to have these teens come back, and let me share my screen and I'll show you what's happening. Okay, can everybody see my big blue screen? Good, okay. So I put a whole lot on this screen. I'm kind of regretting that now, and I apologize if this seems really busy, but we'll go ahead and start. So this is my teen space. This space is actually right off of the front doors. So, and my branch doesn't have meeting rooms or study rooms or anything like that. So the problem in the past was that the adults would come in and they would see comfort and they would sit and they would have their meetings there, they would have their tutoring sessions, whatever they pretty much felt like doing there, they would do it. And we couldn't really stop them because there's no dividing line. There's nothing that says this is for teens. So during COVID, we've really been working on it, trying to make things a little bit different, a little less comfortable for the adults and a little more comfortable for the teens. And we have these great plans so we're still not doing live programming. Our plan is January to start live programming. Fingers crossed. I'm so ready for live programming. I'm so done with all of this virtual stuff, as I'm sure everybody is. So come January, we have these big plans, which I'll talk about in a minute. So number one, we have like this little bar, I guess, area for study and stuff. And what we did there was we have an iPad that we had our IT department kind of lock up. So anybody who uses the iPad can only play with the apps on the iPad. They can't purchase anything. They can't go into the settings. They can't send emails, things like that. They can only use the apps that are visible on the screen. So we purchased some teen apps and some things that we kind of asked some of the teens that were coming in, hey, what would you be interested in? Most of it just came from staff, like, hey, what's popular? So we've got an iPad with some fun stuff. We got Quiver Vision coloring sheets. I don't know if you've ever heard of Quiver Vision. Google it. It's super fun. And there's a lot of coloring sheets that that the teens love. So we put out some teen Quiver Vision coloring sheets. We've seen a lot of them go. The teens are using the Quiver Vision coloring sheets. They're just not asking for the iPad to make the coloring sheets come to life. So but that's cool because they're coloring and stuff. And then you'll see my little pizza bookmarks down there. We got some pizza bookmarks, which are super fun, which we put on that table. And then there's some games. The thing above the workstation is just a brochure holder. That's always been there, and we're just trying to utilize it. So then moving on to number two, we've got the taller tables, and we put games on those tables to, again, hopefully deter adults from making themselves comfortable. Unfortunately, after I saw Kat's presentation this morning, I realized these are not really comfortable for teens either. Oops. But I mean, they're tall tables and they're fun, and you know, I don't know. We're still working on it. It's a work in progress. So then the games, and then behind those we have some comfy chairs, and under normal circumstances, the television we have PlayStation on. We have been keeping that off since we've returned to work, and we are planning on turning it back on. We're revamping our space, and we're making like teen nights. So we're going to start in January on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. We're going to start doing teen nights from 3 to 7:30, and you'll see that coming soon sign. That's where we have this big like sandwich board thing that we're going to put right there in the teen department, so people know it's teen night. And we've got our button maker, and we've got some 3D pens, and we're going to do some programs. We're just going to kind of fill these 2 nights with fun activities to do. And then we're going to turn on the PlayStation during that time, not during the day where the adults can, you know, play PlayStation all day, but just at night. So we're really excited about that. And I wanted to put a special mention, if you see my teen sign above the television, and I put it also on the other side of the thing. I'm super excited about this because we found these on Amazon, and they come with a remote and they light up, and they're super fun. Everybody that comes in is just like mesmerized by the teen letters and how they dance and light up. Anyway, I think that's it. That's my teen space. That's it. How do I stop sharing? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Faith. I think our next person is Kevin.
Hi, everyone. Give me a second to pull my slide up. I'm assuming everybody can see this. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a project that we had done at the Towson branch of Baltimore County Public Library. When I got there a couple of years ago, I think the branch had been the traditional library where quiet is good, and quiet meant studying teams, but not fun teams necessarily. And what kind of sparked this project is a teen in our local high school actually wrote a opinion piece for their newspaper that blasted the community for being anti-teen. They talked about all the places that had closed down in the community, that teens could hang out freely without judgment. And they also talked about all the places that created new rules, like our mall now has restrictions that you can't be under a certain age without a guardian. So there really is no place for teens in the community to hang out outside of school, outside of anything else. Beyond that, we tried a couple of programs upstairs, which is our mezzanine area. And the teens were being shushed during a program, having fun, making buttons and doing all that stuff. So what my goal was to reclaim some space that had been kind of dead space, empty tables that you can see on the left, display cases we had not used since we had had a history room in the Towson branch, and then some staff areas that had been for meetings or quiet staff training times, which is the bottom right. What we did is we created a space that brought the collection and the seating all together, which was prioritizing some visibility for our teams, some connectivity for our teams to let people know that number one, we want them there, and number two, that they have a space that they can just be, that's outside of a program, that's outside of any sort of event that they are required to sign up for. We are also trying to prioritize ownership and adaptability. So everything that we have in the room is kind of just a skeleton right now that we're kind of repurposing from other places. We have a maker cabinet that was just being used as storage. We have board games that were just being used as like props in our branch office. And we're really trying to find a way to create a space, because if we don't create it, nothing's happening, but create something that when we have teams come in, they are able to use and adapt and change and make it what they want to do. The nice thing is that since we've opened it, we have a work-based learning program of teams from a transitional program coming in, and they're using this room as their base of operations and kind of piloting this room for us. They're giving us feedback on the games that we have on the Switch, the decorations we have on the room, and I think they're going to be useful for trying to guide us in the direction we're going in the future. But what this has really highlighted to me is reclaiming kind of space that staff don't need, and advocating for teams, because if we're not advocating with giving them space, we're not showing the community that's a priority the same way we're showing that, you know, early literacy centers like Storyville's are priorities for birth to 5, or the really adult focused meeting rooms are for the adult patrons. We're really trying to also fill this room with things that represent identity. So this is not the final, what you see on the right, because Teen Zone, I was told by our local team, is not a cool sign anymore, and it's a little dated. But we are trying to fill it with like pronoun buttons, pride flags. We have some art from a couple like local Black Lives Matter individuals, and trying to think about what the experience looks like for them. What this does mean is, if my slide, there we go, nope, ignore, that's a spoiler. What we've done is, I've been working with Jake Cherapika, who's another co-chair of MLA TIG, and worked on a survey of teen spaces in the system, because we're really trying to find a way to brand and package teen spaces as a destination. So we do really well packaging a program as the thing to come to, the thing you register, you show up for, maybe you have your parents drive you, but we're looking to be a hangout place, a place where teens can just be and not have any sort of pressure to have expectations to do anything. So we surveyed the system. For the most part, a lot of people thought they had teen spaces. Some people said blanket no. And what they meant there is they have a collection, but they don't have a thing around that collection to bring teens in. But what we did find is that the biggest issues were customers and space and interest and location. But I think there's things to unpack there, right? Like if it's lack of teen interest, how are you getting teens interested? If it's lack of customer, or if it's customer issues, how are you addressing customers and talking about that with your other customers? So this is the next step for us. We're really trying to package teens as an experience for, you know, the same way we do with every other aspect of the library. And I think that actually feeds into what the next topic is. So thank you. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you, Kevin. And now we will move right on along to Will.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So before I start sharing my screen, I just want to get a few statements out of the way because I'm going to be talking about virtual teen spaces, and obviously that's a kind of a hot button topic right now. So what the virtual teen spaces section of this presentation will not be is talking about the specifics of the platforms or how we set it up or anything like that. However, if you'd like to chat more about that, I'm super happy to. You can feel free to reach out to me by email. It's wmalkus@bcpl.net. I can drop that in the chat at some point later. But I'm just going to talk about a few things with virtual teen spaces, and I'm obviously not going to be able to do, I'm not going to be able to account for every question that might come up because we only have about 5 minutes. So if there's anything that you're wondering about, like as I'm going through this, probably the main thing that's going to occur to everyone is like, well, you're making this sound really easy, but it's not that easy for my system to set one of these up or something like that. And trust me, I know that that is true. So feel free, if you have those thoughts, feel free to bring them up in the Q&A portion a little bit later after I'm done with this presentation. But this is just sort of a brief introduction to what virtual teen spaces can look like and how we set ours up in Baltimore County Public Library, because it has been pretty successful. So I will start sharing my screen. And here we go. Everybody should be seeing the presentation. Cool. Yes. Okay. So virtual teen spaces. There are two main ones that I think got used throughout the pandemic, at least in Maryland, that I've heard about. There's Discord and then there's Zoom, obviously. There's pros and cons to both. Zoom, obviously, the teens had to use, or the students or whoever had to use for school. So they are used to using that. They know how it works. Their parents know how it works. They already have it installed. That's all great stuff. However, what it doesn't really encapsulate is the sort of hangout space that can be provided with a teen area or something like that. What Kevin was talking about with the survey that went out, the branch that I work at is one of those ones that just does not have a teen area, never has. We do have a teen collection, and when our reshelving project is done, we are going to set up a teen area, but we didn't have one, and that's one of the reasons why I jumped on board with setting up the BCPL Discord at the beginning of the pandemic, because it's not something I've ever really been able to have at my branch physically, and having a virtual one seemed like a really good compromise to me. So ours is for the entire library system, obviously, not just for my branch. When the teens join, I guess I should, Discord, if you're not familiar with it, is like a combination of sort of like old IRC text-based, coupled with sort of message boards, coupled with video and audio conferencing software similar to what you might have with Zoom. It sort of combines all of that functionality into one platform, and it's been really great because it has all of that and it's free, which is pretty wild. So the first thing the teens see when they join our server is this welcome page that sort of gives them a little bit of information about different channels that they can check out. There's a welcome channel, a rules channel. They can view the schedule for upcoming programs. There's a channel where they can just ask for help if they don't know how to use Discord or if they're confused about anything. And then there's an introductions channel where they can say, hey, you know, this is my name, or if they just want to use their username, that's fine. And they could say a little bit about themselves, just so that the rest of the community knows that somebody new is there and they can welcome them, which our teens are pretty good about doing. So this is just sort of similar to what might be posted in a physical teen space. There's, you know, a few rules and guidelines, some welcome information, upcoming programs, etc. When we were setting up our Discord, we really wanted it to mimic a physical teen space in a library as closely as possible. And so we had that in mind as we were sort of designing the architecture of it. There is a channel also where the teens can self-assign themselves certain roles that can be viewed in their user profile. So the example that I screen capped here is the pronouns. They can assign themselves pronouns of their choice, and they can be viewed in their profiles when people click on them. So you can see that we have a relatively small number of teens who have actually chosen to identify their pronouns, considering that there are about 250-ish accounts in the Discord server. Not all, not all active. We have about 10 maybe that are active, but yeah, it's a relatively small number that choose to self-identify. And what's great about giving them the ability to self-identify is that if they don't feel comfortable saying that, if they don't want to, let people know, or if they're not comfortable expressing that information, they don't have to. It's a choice. And it's also great because internet anonymity can add a layer of freedom to that. While they might not feel comfortable telling somebody their pronouns in real life, they can add them to their profile, and it's not a big deal. There's not a lot of fanfare. There's really not a lot of correcting that has to be done unless somebody uses the wrong ones. And one thing that's really great is we have seen teens switch which pronouns they identify with over the course of their time in the Discord server. So they've, gone from using he, him pronouns to she, her pronouns, or they, them pronouns. And just by clicking these buttons, they can switch which one is assigned to them. And that's like, it's super easy for them to explore how that feels. And that's really great for them. We also split the channel, or we also split the server up into what we call virtual branch and then library programs, similar to how in a branch, the teens might hang out in the teen area, but teen programs might actually happen in a meeting room space or something like that. So the virtual branch is just sort of a collection of topic channels of different things that they can talk about to keep it separate and so that one channel doesn't get clogged up and they move around. Some of the topics you'll probably notice are a little surprising. Like we didn't have a cooking channel. They asked for a cooking channel. They wanted to share like pictures of food and recipes and things like that. And same with like art and photography. A surprising number of them wanted to post photography, which we weren't counting on. So we've just sort of added and adapted those things throughout the time on the server. Similar to that, though, also I should mention that like when we first set up the pronouns role, we only had he, him, she, her, they, them. When the teens started joining, some of them started asking for he, they, and she, they to be an option, so we added it. And so it's really easy also in Discord to sort of change and update these things and incorporate their suggestions, and it's a lot easier to change a virtual space than it is to change a physical teen space, as I'm sure anyone who's tried is aware. And then the library programs section of the channel is where we actually do our virtual programming. So we have a general library programs chat and a general library programs voice channel, and we try to match them so that if they're in the voice channel, they can also post text-based if in the corresponding text channel, if they're more comfortable with that, or if they can't use a microphone or anything like that. Yeah. So we have some of our ongoing programs in here. We do Minecraft. Well, we did Minecraft. That one recently got discontinued due to lack of interest, but Dungeons and Dragons is still super popular. And then the library programs chat and our library programs voice channels are sort of the ones we use for general purpose. I think probably the coolest illustration of the way we've used Discord to do virtual programming for teens is probably our anime art hangout program, if I had to pick one, just because the option to screen share in Discord, similar to how you can screen share in Zoom, meant that the presenter could be working on artwork that she was working on and share her screen or turn her camera on so that they could see what she was physically drawing, and then the teens could do the same. So we had teens who were in there working on like animation projects or just generally drawing things or pixel art or things like that, who could share their screen and all work like it simultaneously and see each other's progress as they're going. And probably even easier than they would be if they were all sitting around the same table. So that's been really great. So that's just kind of a brief overview of the philosophy we had in mind when we set up the Discord server. Moving on to the next slide, I did just want to talk about teens existing in virtual spaces and us existing alongside them. The first example that I've posted here was an interesting conversation that we had to have in the early days of the Discord server when somebody joined with a fairly questionable username. And when working with teens, you do have to sort of pick your battles. So like with this one, we said, hey, we recognize that your Discord username is in every server that you're in, and there's really no way for you to hide it. We don't want to ask you to change it, but if you can set a nickname, because then that's what displays instead of your actual account name, we would really appreciate it. So, we love to compromise with them, but sometimes it's just not an option. And we do have to sort of like try to find a middle ground, and failing that, eventually take more direct action. But with these last three examples before I stop talking, I'm sorry, last four examples before I stop talking, I just wanted to illustrate that just like with teens in IRL spaces, if you leave them to their own devices, they can really surprise you. And I think probably the most heartwarming part of running this server is that we're even more in the background than we would be in a physical teen space. And so you get to observe all of these interactions in a platform that they're comfortable with as young people, from a certain degree of like anonymity. So we get to see them like, try to help each other solve their homework. We get to see them disagree with each other and sort of naturally come to a compromise, or at least, a point where they can disengage. We can see them ask for topics that they're interested in that they might not normally feel comfortable going to an adult and asking about. And we can see them, offering each other sort of mental health support and aid, or at least suggestions for things that help them be calm. They can empathize with each other, because obviously during the pandemic, when we created this server, that was something that was really important, and we witnessed them struggling. We added that channel because they were having such a hard time, and it was hard for them to sort of bounce those traumas and things that they were experiencing off of each other, just like nonstop. So the channel that is sort of isolated in now is one that's optional. They can opt into it, they can opt out of it, and that's also really important to give them. So I'll stop talking now, but that's sort of a brief overview of how we set up our teen Discord and some of what makes having virtual teen spaces so valuable, especially in this day and age. So thanks everyone. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you, everyone. Hold on, I'm gonna add all of our speakers to the spotlight. There we go. So now, if anyone has any questions for our speakers, we'll get specific questions out of the way, and then we'll open it up later to general discussions to hear what other people are trying, or if you have anything that you want to brainstorm. And again, feel free to either raise your hand or drop it in chat. We're happy with any and all ways. It's a good question from Willis. Notice that most of the teen librarians presenting are white, and wondering how much consideration for developing your spaces for teens of color.
I'll start. I benefit in my branch from also having a inclusion and diversity team focused on starting those conversations. And there's actually a large crossover between our team and the teen team that is focusing on working the space. So we've been talking a lot about that in terms of what can we do to make sure everything in there is representative of the teams that are coming into from the community, as well as the teams that we might not see. The branch I work at is a pretty diverse area because it has a lot of the upper class and a lot of traveling students because of a lot of universities. But just down the street, there's a big pocket of high need users in a different community. So a lot of what we've been doing is trying to just create a skeleton where they can fill in the gaps for us. And a lot of the people on our team deciding this have really been speaking up about representing different voices, making sure that different faces are represented in our programming, and making sure that the leadership positions we're creating for teams as well are also representing that, because I think they're the better advocates than we are for a lot of this stuff.
I can speak on that too. My department has there's 3 of us in my department, and we are not all white. The community is very diverse, and we're actually right next door to a middle school. So at 3:15 every day, the kids just kind of flood through our parking lot, and we try to lure them in. And we try to get their feedback. And pre-COVID, we actually were giving them snacks for their opinions. So we got huge success with that. So we were giving out surveys and we were giving them snacks, and they were letting us know what they were looking for and what would bring them in as far as programming and the offerings that we were willing to do. And we got a lot of great feedback from that. So so my library is located in a neighborhood with a school, very diverse community, and my staff is very diverse as well. So I feel like I think we're doing okay. I think that's up for definitely, if you want to give me your opinion on that, I would love to hear it. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just briefly, address the virtual programs also. I mean, the thing that's been so great about having this sort of centralized virtual teen space that isn't attached to any one branch or community is that prior to the pandemic, our Baltimore County, because it's sort of this horseshoe, and it's so diverse, but also still fairly segregated. Gave us the opportunity to have an environment, even though it's virtual, where teens from one neighborhood who would usually go to their branch can also interact with teens from another neighborhood who would normally only go to their branch, and coexist in this space together. And it's not it happens naturally because they don't usually identify themselves. There is an option in the server where they can choose a home branch that they go to, but existing side by side one another in this virtual environment, most of them don't have their profile pictures that look like them. It's usually, an anime character, a piece of artwork that they've made or something like that. So there really aren't those expectations or preconceptions or anything like that. It's a very sort of neutral playing field for them to talk to each other. And I would say that that's been one of the most uplifting thing, and something that we're trying to incorporate more into our general service model across BCPL is sort of trying to focus on teen services as an entire county library system instead of branch by branch, and trying to find ways to reach across to these pockets that would normally never interact with each other. So I think it's been really helpful in that regard.
Thank you all. We have a couple of questions about Discord. The first one being, do you have a problem with adults in Discord? Is someone always monitoring it? Then the other one is, if Discord isn't possible, are there other virtual platforms that requiring less monitoring and manpower?
Yeah, I'll start with the other virtual platforms. Obviously, Zoom is the logical alternative, but I will say also that you probably already have virtual teen spaces in your library system, like a section of the website that talks about teen collections, teen services, anything like that. That's a virtual teen space. Really, just anywhere that includes, that makes them feel welcome, that invites them in, and makes it clear that you've thought about them as a demographic, as an age group, as somebody that you want buy-in at the library from, is a virtual teen space. So even though we're talking about this massive undertaking that our library system did here, that doesn't mean that you can't do it on a smaller scale and that the same principles don't apply. That being said, if you're trying to do virtual programs and things like that, Zoom is the logical alternative because, like I said, they already know how to use it. They've used it for school for 2 years, for better or worse. But it does include a lot of the same components that Discord does have. It just doesn't necessarily give them that ability to sort of hang out and chat with each other whenever they want. But I know plenty of library systems that did, instead of like we do our Dungeons and Dragons program through Discord, a friend of mine did her Dungeons and Dragons programs over Zoom, and it was just as successful, if not more so. So that is an alternative that doesn't require as much staff monitoring. To touch on that also with the question about whether there are adults in our Discord and if someone's always monitoring it, we have tried a bunch of different models over the course of the pandemic to address this. As far as we know, no, there are no adults in our Discord. We do have a sign-up form that they have to go through. They have to provide a name, an age, an email address, and like a branch that they most often go to, and then where they heard about the server. And then we send that email a join invitation to the server. So I know, like Britt was saying in the chat, that library system record library card numbers. We don't do that, but we have found that this is a pretty effective barrier. That's, you know, it's not prohibiting, but it does seem to cut down on the number of people who are just sort of joining to troll us or like have fun. And we have gotten our fair share of fake names. You know, we've gotten your like these nuts and things like that plenty of times, but we just don't send them a join link. And then it's not really an issue. So could they use a fake name and a fake email? Yes, absolutely. Is your average teen that's just trying to, like, you know, post a meme or a really loud soundbite going to go through the trouble to do that? Most of the time, no. We do have staff members that are always sort of monitoring the Discord, but our teens, we've noticed, are pretty good at self-reporting and keeping an eye on things themselves. And there is a way that they can tag all of the staff members that are in the server to alert us if there is something that has come up. We also use a Discord bot that monitors for certain language terms, slurs mostly, that we will automatically delete. It will automatically warn the user, and it'll automatically let us know who said it. And then we also have filtering turned on in the Discord server so that any inappropriate images get caught by that. And similarly, or actually they aren't allowed to post them if Discord detects that there's something inappropriate in it. So it's a pretty good algorithm. Yeah, so I hope that addresses those questions mostly. Again, happy to chat more about this. It's kind of a complicated process, and we did spend a year or more kind of, it's definitely not perfect, but we've gotten better over the course of a year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, we're constantly making edits to our procedures too for Discord. So it's an ever evolving monster. So William has a question in chat. What insights have your teen surveys given you that might be useful to other systems to make our spaces more intersectional?
Faith, you want to go? Okay. We haven't done one for teens yet. So the survey we've done have been for spaces and just trying to do the skeleton structure of it. But my supervisor worked at a different branch, the Woodlawn branch, which is right next to the Woodlawn High School. They see more teens in a day than I think most of the branches we work at see in a month. And he is a Black male, so he talked a lot about running regular teen time programs where the young Black men would come in and basically tell him they had never thought that they would see somebody like him working in it, and that it was an option for them at the future. The way that has resonated with me is that beyond the work-based learning program that we've been doing at the Towson branch, which again works with some of our local high schools for teens that are in a transitional period. We did a summer internship over the summer with Baltimore County government. And what they do is they really solicit from different schools and help teens get experience working in fields they might not have ever worked at. And my team on her first day, she was a young Black girl, had basically told me she didn't think she'd want to work at the library because she thought it was a bunch of old white people, which I was like, valid. For the most part, this is the experience. And we've talked a lot about the future. And I think she's been a good sounding board. So while we haven't had a survey, I've been really talking to her because we ended up keeping her and hiring her, which has really benefited us. But she's been a good source of trying to figure out like what that space would look like for her and what her perspective would be as like a recent graduate. She's still very new, so she's still training on library things, but I know she's going to be an asset down the road, and I think help us be the like microphone to like get into the community with what her friends are and what they like and stuff.
So I was only here 6 months before COVID hit. So my initial teen survey was more of a get to know you. I wanted them to get to know me. I wanted to get to know them. So it was more of kind of a generic survey. What are you reading? What do you like to read? What do you want to see at the library? You know, if we had new PlayStation games, what would you be interested in? I'm trying to think of what some of the other questions. Program. What kind of programs would bring you and your friends to the library? You know, stuff like that. Because my ultimate goal, I wanted to have the teen group that, you know, pretty much ran the library for me. And, you know, I wanted to get programming that they were interested in and everything else. So I was kind of making my surveys very functional in that, where let's get to know each other first, and then I'm going to start asking harder questions, and then I'm going to start asking more from you, and then, you know, so that's kind of what was my goal in the whole thing, and it fell flat because COVID hit. So but we did have a huge outpouring of responses with our surveys, and with the surveys too, we were kind of able to look at our collection and say, okay, you know, the teens are talking about this stuff, and we only have one, or, you know, whatever. So it was helping us to be able to build our collection and to be able to kind of narrow in on what the teens were looking for as far as the collection and things like that. But like I said, I had bigger plans. I was hoping to get more information as time went on, and I was hoping to kind of evolve my space with them in mind, and with them helping, because I wanted them to be a part of it, and I wanted them to take pride in, you know, what we were doing at this branch, and, you know, and if you build it, they will come, you know. So yeah, so I think what I'm going to end up doing is just, once we go live again, you know, I've got this teen space in the works, and teen nights, and I'm just kind of hoping to reconnect with them, and, you know, and then start over, I guess. So yeah, you're asking really great questions, William. Thank you.
Hello?
And I hope you
One
I hope
second,
that
let
helps.
me take this down. I got my min thing. Let me take this down quick. Okay, go ahead.
If you're unmuted, please mute yourself. I think we got it, but not positive. Okay, so Tia, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we made it through all of our questions. So I'm going to remove spotlights from people, and we're gonna open it up to everyone. Okay. So now we have about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes left. I try to get people out a little early so we're not rushing from Zoom room to Zoom room. But if anybody has something that they would like to share, maybe something when rethinking your spaces, a tip from you. We have 3 experts here that are presenting, but I'm sure there are plenty of other experts in the room. Okay. Okay, Jill asks, does anybody have good advice for branches that don't have a dedicated team space nor room to add one? What can you do in existing spaces like a one-room branch to make it more teen friendly?
I feel like my branch is a pretty open floor plan. We don't really have a designated teen space. I mean, we do obviously, but it's just a big open floor plan. So if I don't know, I guess could you box it in, maybe make a shelving and seating and just maybe in a little nook in the corner, or I don't know. That's my idea.
I feel like we also have talked a lot about surveys, asking the teens directly what would make the space feel more inviting would be my first tip. I had an intern one summer whose job was to do something similar. It was an open floor plan, and we had gotten some funding to kind of create a teen space out of nothing. And the intern spent all summer surveying and doing focus groups with teens and parents to figure out what was needed.
Yeah, I mean, so I mentioned my branch is going to be incorporating a teen space for the first time since it's opened. When we used the thin veneer of rearranging our shelving units in order to get the opportunity to do this, and by moving the teen area to new shelving units that are actually going to be the like barriers between the teen space and the rest of the library, we're going to finally be able to sort of have an area that is for teens to sit and hang out in. So it's, we're not setting up physical walls or building a new area. My branch is also a one-room branch, by the way. But yeah, we are not going to be like setting up physical walls or building anything like that. We're going to be using the shelving itself as a way to demarcate, this is the teen area, this is not the teen area. And so, finding opportunities like that, I think it is really, really valuable if you have any options like that. And yeah, I mean, I think just having a space, like even just having a label, like I said, with having like a teen section of the website being a virtual teen space, it's similar. If you have a sign up that says teen area or something like that, it does at least, put out an invitation. And that's better than not having anything.
The branch I worked at before this one was probably the size of a nice little living room. And it had like 2 shelves of teen books, and that was pretty much it. So we made a little nook for the teens, which is fine. But I think the bigger focus was also pulling away from like what a teen space is and like that the whole library is for teens. So in the end, it had to just be, we had to have things spread throughout that teens might use, but also understand that adults and stuff would use, because there was no other option to make that work with what we had. I think Liz in the comments had also said like whiteboards and passive programming really helped there too. I know when we did the teen survey of our system, a couple branches just had whiteboards, and I think that is a place to start because you can get their feedback, you can get them engaged with each other, and you can also have like positive or affirmation or things like that that they might not be getting elsewhere.
I also noticed that Renee asked if for the survey, paper versus online. I personally like the paper surveys better because then you get to talk to your teams. You get to look at them. You get to ask them questions. You get to bribe them with snacks. I know one of the previous sessions, somebody had asked about not being able to give out food, and Charles County Public Library is still in that place where we're not allowed to be giving out food right now. But we have other stuff. We have little swag things, pencil toppers, color changing pencils, bookmarks, tons of stuff that we can give to the kids, and the teens, we can give to the teens, and in exchange for their very valuable feedback. So I personally like paper better than online, but that's just me.
if you hate paper, which some of my teen people do, something that we love to do is just slap a QR code on a piece of paper, and you can still like chat with them while you're like holding the QR code up for them to scan. Also saves you from having, like, if you're one of those people that like to insert the data and like view it and all of that, it might save you a little time. Although I like the paper too, Faith. I like tangible.
There's a question in the chat from Liz Brown. How, any good resources for building surveys specifically for teens? How to effectively phrase those questions? I'll just say that we did some for our teen workshops in the summer, and we basically said like, I like this workshop. Yes, no, maybe. Like, the most basic questions. I would do this again. Yes, no, maybe. And then we gave them space to comment. So we tried to keep it quick, clear, and not a lot of large words.
Lots of good things happening in the chat. Sorry, it's hard to be someone facilitating while also trying to read. But yeah, lots of great things happening in the chat. Jill, I am interested if you remember what your plant's name is. I always love good plant names. Making sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. Thank you all so much. Thank you to our presenters, and thank you to everyone that participated in the discussion, both with your voice and with your fingers. It's much appreciated. We had the sign-in sheet dropped in the chat quite a few times. If you did not get a chance to sign in, just let us know, and Tia can drop it one more time. Again, we will be sending out CE and all of that great stuff within the next week. It's towards the end of the week, which is why I don't say this week. So probably sometime early next week, you'll get an email from Carrie with all of the information. Again, I will drop our site in the chat. You can go see the slides that were used today, and also bios for our speakers. In, what is it, 5 minutes, we will also have our next 2 sessions, which is teen mental health awareness and teen self-expression and activism. So I hope to see you all there.